Alien girl followed the human through the dust fields. Her reason came only when stars appeared. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, back to our main characters. John Carter was a man of simple means but great heart. A drifter, with no ties to anyone, just wandering the dry, desolate lands in search of something he couldn't quite define. His boots kicked up dust as he trudged through the wasteland, the endless stretch of barren earth before him making him feel small, almost insignificant. But there was something about this place, something about the dust fields, that made him keep moving forward. It wasn't just the promise of something greater. It was the need to escape from his own past, from the mistakes that haunted him. That's when he noticed her. At first, it was just a flicker at the edge of his vision, a dark figure against the pale horizon, a silhouette he thought was just the wind playing tricks. But when he squinted, he saw her clearly. A girl, not quite human, her skin a shade of deep green that shimmered faintly under the harsh light of the twin suns. She was following him, a slow, deliberate pace, her every step kicking up small clouds of dust. He had seen aliens before, but none like this. Her eyes glowed faintly, catching the sunlight in a way that made them appear almost otherworldly. She didn't speak, didn't ask for help, didn't even acknowledge his presence directly. Yet there she was, unwavering in her pursuit. For a while, John tried to ignore her, focusing instead on the road ahead. But the feeling that he was being watched lingered, and when he stopped to rest, he could feel her presence behind him, always a few steps away, always just within sight. At first, it unsettled him. He had no desire to be involved with anyone, let alone a strange alien girl in the middle of nowhere. But there was something about her, something he couldn't put his finger on, that made him wonder. Why was she following him? What did she want? As the day turned to night, the temperature began to drop. The twin moons rose high in the sky, casting a soft, eerie light over the dusty plains. That's when the girl spoke. Her voice was soft, barely a whisper against the wind, but it carried an undeniable urgency. "I need you to help me," she said. Her eyes locked on his with an intensity that sent a shiver down his spine. John turned to face her, the words on his lips dying before they could form. He hadn't expected this. She was finally speaking to him. "Help you?" he asked, the words feeling strange in his mouth. "Why me? What do you want from me?" She stepped closer, the distance between them closing. "I have been following you because I have no choice. My people, my world, they have abandoned me. I cannot go back." The girl's voice broke for a moment, her usually unwavering confidence faltering as she spoke. "I have nowhere else to turn. Only you can help me now." For the first time, John saw the desperation in her eyes. It wasn't just a quest for survival. It was something deeper, something personal. And in that moment, as the stars above began to twinkle in the vast expanse of the night sky, John realized that this wasn't just about him. This was about something greater, something that would change both of their lives forever. And it all started with a girl who followed him through the dust fields, a girl who had a reason that would only be revealed when the stars appeared above them. John hesitated for a moment, the weight of her words pressing down on him. He wasn't used to helping people, especially not strangers, especially not someone like her. But there was something in her voice, a rawness that made him think twice. He studied her for a moment, the faint light of the moons reflecting off her glowing eyes. She wasn't just another alien. She was something else, something more. And she was asking him for help. He took a deep breath, running a hand through his hair, his gaze drifting back to the path ahead. The wind howled through the empty dust fields, carrying with it the scent of dry earth and the promise of a storm. "I don't know what you expect from me," John finally said, his voice quiet but firm. "I'm just a guy. I don't have the answers you're looking for." Zara looked at him, her eyes filled with a quiet understanding. She stepped closer, her presence calming the tension in the air. "You don't need to have all the answers," she said softly. "You just need to help me find my way." Her words hung in the air between them, and for a moment, John felt something stir inside him. He wasn't sure if it was pity, curiosity, or something else, but the feeling was strong. He looked at her and nodded. All right, he said, his voice steady. I'll help you. But you've got to tell me everything. What's going on? Why are you here? Zara took a deep breath, as if gathering the courage to say what she had been keeping inside for so long. My people. They left me behind, she said, her voice breaking slightly. I was supposed to be part of something important, but they abandoned me. I don't know why. I don't know what happened. All I know is that I can't go back. John's heart went out to her, the weight of her pain undeniable. She was lost, and she didn't know where to turn. But he couldn't deny the spark of something more, something deeper, that was beginning to form between them. It wasn't just about helping her survive the night. There was something about this girl, this alien, that made him want to protect her, to do whatever it took to make sure she was safe. He looked up at the night sky, the stars twinkling above them like tiny beacons in the darkness. For a moment, he felt as if they were the only two souls left in the universe, the weight of the world pressing down on them both. We'll figure this out, he said, more to himself than to her. We'll find a way. Zara nodded, her expression softening for the first time since they had met. Thank you, she whispered. I don't know what I would do without you. John felt the tension in his chest ease slightly as they stood there, the cold wind swirling around them. He didn't know what lay ahead, but for the first time in a long time, he felt like he was on the right path. He looked down at Zara, her eyes filled with trust, and he knew that no matter what came next, he wouldn't let her down. They began walking again, the dust field stretching out before them, but now they weren't alone. They had each other, and that was all that mattered. As they walked under the stars, a new understanding began to grow between them. Zara wasn't just some alien girl in need of help. She was someone who had a story, a past, and a future that was yet to be written. And John was going to be there to help her write it. The cold night air was thick with dust, the faint starlight barely illuminating the cracked, parched earth beneath their feet. John and Zara moved forward, the silence between them thick and heavy, filled only by the distant sound of wind howling across the barren plains. The harsh winds whipped at their clothes, but John hardly noticed anymore. His focus was on Zara, walking beside him, her presence a constant reminder of the strange twist his life had taken. As they walked, John glanced at her occasionally, noticing how she moved, elegant, yet with a quiet strength that made her seem different from any other alien he had encountered. It was more than just the obvious difference in her appearance, the deep green skin, the glowing eyes. There was something else about her, something mysterious. They reached a small ridge overlooking a dry valley, the wind dying down for a moment as if the land itself was holding its breath. We'll rest here for a bit, John said, his voice low but steady. Zara nodded, and they both sat down on the cold ground, the landscape stretching endlessly before them. John pulled out a small ration pack, offering one to Zara. She hesitated for a moment before accepting, her eyes flicking up to meet his. Thank you, she said, her voice soft but laced with a hint of something else, gratitude, perhaps, or something deeper. John gave a half smile, trying to keep the mood light. No problem. It's not much, but it'll keep us going for now. He unwrapped his own ration, taking a bite as he looked out over the valley. The quiet stretched between them, the stars above them twinkling softly, their light offering little warmth in the cold night. Finally, Zara broke the silence. You never asked me why I was abandoned, she said, her voice quiet, almost like she wasn't sure if she should speak the words aloud. John turned to her, the bite of food still in his mouth. He swallowed, trying to find the right words. I guess I didn't really think about it. You said you couldn't go back, and that's enough for me right now. But if you want to tell me, I'm listening. Zara looked up at the sky, her eyes distant, as if she was seeing something far beyond the stars. I was part of a mission, she began, her voice low and steady. I was meant to be a leader of sorts for my people. But something went wrong. I was injured during the mission, and when I was no longer of use, they left me, abandoned me. Her voice cracked for a moment, but she quickly regained control, her gaze fixed on the stars. John's heart tightened. He had no idea what it felt like to be abandoned, to be left behind by the people you trusted. But he could feel the weight of her pain, heavy in the air between them. He reached out, his hand brushing against hers, offering what comfort he could. You're not alone now, he said quietly, his voice sincere. Zara turned her hand over, gripping his gently. Her eyes met his, and for the first time, John saw the vulnerability there, the part of her that had been hidden beneath her tough exterior. "I know," she whispered, "and I'm grateful for that." They sat in silence for a long while, the wind picking up again, but neither of them cared. The distance between them had closed, and for the first time in what felt like forever, they were both just two people, lost in the vast expanse of space and time, finding something in each other that neither had expected. As the stars continued to shine above them, John couldn't help but feel like this was the beginning of something more, something that would change both of their lives forever. The silence between them stretched, but this time it was different. It wasn't uncomfortable or heavy. Instead, it felt like the quiet before something new. John glanced at Zara, her face illuminated by the faint glow of the stars above them, her expression unreadable. He wanted to say something, anything, to break the stillness, but he didn't want to spoil the moment. The wind had died down again, leaving the night air still and cool. John could feel the weight of the journey ahead. He had no idea what lay ahead, but for the first time in a long while, he wasn't afraid of the unknown. They both sat on the ridge, gazing out at the endless desert stretching before them. The ground was cracked, and the remnants of what could have been an ancient civilization were scattered across the landscape. It was desolate, but beautiful in its own way. Zara turned her head slightly, her glowing eyes meeting his. "Why did you help me?" she asked, her voice soft but filled with curiosity. John sighed, leaning back on his hands. He had been wondering that himself, ever since he first met her. He wasn't a hero, and he wasn't someone who went out of his way for others. Realized something important. This journey wasn't just about getting from one place to another. It was about discovering who they were, what they were capable of. Together, they could face whatever came next. The road ahead was uncertain, but they had each other. And for the first time, John felt that maybe that was enough. The next few days passed in a blur of quiet determination. John and Zara kept moving through the barren desert landscape, the only sound between them the soft crunch of their boots on the dry ground and the occasional whistle of the wind. Despite the harsh conditions, they made progress, always heading toward the distant mountains John had spotted on the horizon. It was a slow, methodical journey, but it felt different now. It wasn't just about survival. It was about moving forward, together. As they approached the base of the mountains, Zara began to open up more, telling John about her people and the mission that had led to her abandonment. It wasn't much, but it was a start. "I was meant to be a leader," she explained one evening as they set up camp. "Not just for my people, but for an entire colony. A colony that relied on me for everything. But when I was hurt, when I became less than I was, they turned their backs on me." John listened quietly, feeling the weight of her words. "That's tough," he said finally, his voice gentle. "But you're here now. You're still standing, and that means something." Zara looked up at him, her glowing eyes softening in the low firelight. "It doesn't feel like enough," she admitted. "I was supposed to be more. I was supposed to lead." John could see the pain in her eyes, but there was something else there too. Strength, determination. It reminded him of his own struggles, of the things he had left behind, the life he had chosen to run from. "You don't have to be what they wanted you to be," John said, his voice firm but kind. "You're here, and you're still fighting. That's all anyone can ask for." Zara looked at him for a long moment, and John could see the silent acknowledgement pass between them. She didn't need to be anyone else. She just needed to keep going, just like he did. As the fire crackled between them, John noticed the way the light danced in Zara's eyes, the way the shadows played across her features. She was no longer just an alien in need of help. She was someone he trusted, someone he cared about. The realization hit him harder than he expected. They had come so far together, and the connection between them had grown in ways he hadn't anticipated. As the days turned into weeks, their bond only deepened. John found himself sharing things he hadn't told anyone in years, his past, his regrets, his desire to find something worth fighting for. Zara, in turn, opened up more, revealing the depths of her past, the pain of being abandoned, and the hope she still carried despite everything. One evening, as they sat together on a rocky outcrop, overlooking the vast expanse of desert, Zara turned to him with a serious expression. "John, you've done more for me than anyone else ever has. I can't repay you for what you've given me." John shook his head, a slight smile tugging at the corner of his lips. You don't have to repay me, he said. Just keep moving forward. That's all I'm asking. Zara's eyes softened, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she smiled. A genuine, warm smile that reached her eyes. I will, she said quietly. And in that moment, John knew they would both continue forward, together, no matter what challenges lay ahead. The road was still uncertain, but they were no longer walking it alone. The days seemed to blur together as John and Zara continued their journey through the desert. The landscape never changed. Endless stretches of cracked earth, the occasional rocky outcrop, and the same sky that seemed to stretch on forever. But despite the monotony, something had shifted between them. They no longer spoke just to fill the silence. Their conversations had become deeper, more personal. Zara had begun to share more about her past, her people, and the mission she had failed. The more she spoke, the more John realized how much she had endured, and how much strength she had. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Zara stopped walking. She had her hand over her chest, as if feeling something deep inside her. What's wrong? John asked, concerned. Zara didn't answer immediately. She stood still, staring into the distance, the wind picking up. Again, sweeping the dust across the barren landscape. Finally, she spoke. I'm not sure what comes next, she said, her voice quieter than usual. I've always had a plan, a purpose. But now I don't know. I don't know if I can still lead my people. I don't know if I can ever go back. John stepped closer to her, his presence calm, like a steady anchor in a storm. You don't need to go back, he said softly. You've already proven that you're strong. You're still standing. That's what matters. Zara looked at him, her eyes searching his face, as if trying to find the answer she needed. But what if I'm not enough? She whispered. John shook his head. You are enough. You always have been. Zara's gaze softened, and for a moment, she seemed lost in thought. Then, as if making a decision, she let out a long breath and nodded. Thank you, John. I'm starting to believe that maybe I can still do something. Maybe it's not too late. The weight that had been pressing down on her seemed to lift, just a little. It wasn't a magic fix, but it was a start. They continued walking, the distance between the mountains now much smaller. As they neared a canyon, Zara stopped again. This time, she looked around with a sense of wonder in her eyes. I've never seen anything like this, she said, her voice filled with awe. John smiled, realizing that this was more than just survival. It was about rediscovering the world through new eyes, Zara's eyes. There's a lot of beauty in the world, he said. You just have to look for it. As they continued their journey, John realized that what he had expected to be a short, solitary trip had turned into something much more. This wasn't just about getting to a destination. It was about finding something in each other, something they both needed, whether they realized it or not. And as the night settled in, and the stars began to appear above them, John couldn't help but feel a sense of hope rise in his chest. They didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long while, it didn't seem so scary. The journey had taken a new turn. As they climbed higher into the mountains, the terrain grew more rugged and the air thinner, but with each step, they felt closer to something. John could see the change in Zara too. The weight of her past, the uncertainty of her future, seemed to fade with every passing day. She had begun to walk with a newfound purpose, her steps more assured. The silence between them was comfortable now, a quiet understanding that didn't need to be broken by words. One evening, as they made camp near the edge of a cliff, the view before them was breathtaking. The sun was setting, casting the mountains in a golden light that reflected off the rocks. Zara sat on a large stone, her legs crossed beneath her, staring out at the vast expanse of land below. John watched her for a moment before speaking, his voice gentle. I think we've made it farther than I ever thought we would. Zara turned to him, a small smile playing at the corners of her lips. I think so too. I never expected to make it this far either. She looked down at her hands, almost as if she was studying them. But I'm glad we did. John sat down next to her, letting out a sigh. I don't know about you, but this whole journey, it's been different than what I expected. I thought I was just trying to survive, to get away from everything. But now, it feels like something more. Zara glanced at him, her expression soft. Something more? Yeah, John said, nodding. It's not just about getting from one place to another anymore. It's about finding something. Something I didn't know I was looking for. There was a pause, the air around them still except for the gentle rustling of leaves. Zara shifted slightly, her eyes meeting his. "I think I understand what you mean," she said softly. "I thought I was just running from my past, from the mistakes I made. But now, I feel like maybe I'm running towards something. Something I can't quite name yet." John didn't answer right away. He wasn't sure what to say. They were both so different, yet so similar in the way they had been shaped by their pasts. He reached out, placing his hand on her shoulder gently. "Whatever comes next, we'll face it together," he said, his voice steady. Zara's gaze softened, and she nodded slowly. "Together," she echoed, her voice barely above a whisper. They sat in companionable silence as the last of the sunlight dipped below the horizon, the stars slowly beginning to appear in the clear sky above them. There was no telling what lay ahead, whether the path would get harder, or if they would find what they were searching for. But in that moment, neither of them cared about the unknown. They had each other, and for now, that was enough. The night settled in around them, quiet and peaceful, as they both found comfort in the shared journey they were on. Together, they would continue moving forward, one step at a time. The following days grew even more difficult as the terrain became more treacherous, but with each step, John and Zara found themselves relying on each other more. The high mountains stretched endlessly before them, their peaks hidden in the clouds, and the air grew thinner as they ascended further. Every step felt like a challenge, but every challenge brought them closer together. One afternoon, as the sun dipped lower in the sky, they paused at a small cave, seeking shelter from the winds that had begun to howl through the mountain passes. Inside, the cave was cool and quiet, the only sound the faint drip of water from the ceiling. They set up camp, the fire crackling softly between them as they both sat against the cave wall, the exhaustion of the journey weighing heavily on them. John stared into the fire for a long moment, his mind wandering. He had no idea what the future held for them. He didn't know if Zara's people would ever accept her back, or if they would even survive this journey. But he couldn't help but feel a strange sense of peace. He wasn't alone anymore. He wasn't just a drifter anymore. He had someone to fight for. "What happens when we reach the other side?" Zara asked, breaking the silence. Her voice was low, but there was an uncertainty in it that John hadn't heard before. He turned to look at her, her eyes reflecting the light of the fire. "I don't know," he said honestly. "We'll figure it out together, one step at a time." Zara looked at him, her gaze softening, and for the first time in a long while, John saw the weight of her past lift from her shoulders, just for a moment. She nodded, a faint smile playing at the corners of her lips. "Together," she whispered. They sat there in silence for a while, the warmth from the fire soothing their tired bodies. The stars were barely visible through the cave entrance, but the silence of the night seemed to settle in around them, a sense of calm that neither had felt for a long time. John leaned back against the cool stone of the cave, his thoughts drifting to the future. Whatever came next, he knew they would face it together. And that thought, for the first time in a long time, didn't scare him. Zara shifted beside him, and he looked over to find her watching him, her eyes filled with something he couldn't quite name. "Thank you, John," she said quietly. "For everything." John smiled, the weight of her words sinking in. "You don't have to thank me," he said, his voice steady. "We're in this together. We'll make it through, no matter what." She didn't respond right away, but her hand found his in the dim light of the fire. They sat like that for a while, the connection between them deepening with every passing moment. There were still many unknowns, many challenges ahead. But with Zara beside him, John felt a strength he had never known before. Together, they would find their way, no matter what came next. The morning light filtered softly through the cracks in the cave, casting a warm glow over the rocky walls. John woke first, stretching stiff muscles as the coldness of the mountain air began to lift. The fire had long since died down, but the silence of the early morning was comforting, almost serene. Zara was still asleep beside him, her breathing steady and calm. John looked out at the landscape before them, the mountains now bathed in the soft light of dawn, their peaks still shrouded in mist. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in what felt like forever, John didn't feel overwhelmed by the unknown. The thought of the journey no longer seemed daunting, not with Zara by his side. She had become something more to him than just a companion on a difficult path. She had become a reason, a purpose. As if sensing his gaze, Zara stirred, blinking her eyes open to the new day. She turned her head slowly, her gaze meeting John's, and for a moment, neither of them said anything. They simply shared the silence, a quiet understanding passing between them. "Morning," Zara said softly, her voice still thick with sleep. John smiled, stretching one last time before sitting up. "Morning," he replied. "You sleep well?" Zara nodded, pushing herself up and dusting off her clothes. "I did. I haven't slept like that in a long time." There was something in her voice, a softness he hadn't heard before. It was the sound of someone who had finally found peace, even if only for a moment. The weight of the past had been lifted, or at least made bearable, and for the first time since they had met, Zara seemed content. John reached over, offering her a hand to help her up. "We've got a long way to go today," he said, "but I think we're ready for it." Zara took his hand, standing up with a slight wince as she stretched. "I think so too." They packed up their camp quickly, the mountain air still crisp and cool as they made their way out of the cave. The wind had picked up again, but it didn't feel as harsh as it had in the past. The further they traveled, the more they began to see signs of life. Small plants pushing through the rocky soil, the faint chirp of distant birds, and even the occasional flash of movement in the sky above them. The mountains were beginning to give way to a more welcoming terrain. They had crossed the worst of the desert, and now the land seemed to be opening up to them. Zara walked beside John, her steps more confident now, less burdened. They had been through so much together, and yet there was still so much to learn about each other, about themselves, and about the world they were trying to understand. "Do you ever think about where we're headed?" Zara asked after a while, her voice thoughtful. John glanced over at her, meeting her gaze. "Every day," he said, "but I think I'm starting to realize that the journey is just as important as the destination." Zara smiled at that, a genuine smile that reached her eyes. "I like that," she said. "Maybe the journey is the point after all." John nodded, the weight of her words sinking in. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about finding something more, something they could hold on to, something worth the struggle. As they continued on, the mountains behind them seemed smaller now, and the world ahead, though unknown, felt a little less daunting. Whatever came next, they would face it together. They were no longer just two strangers on a path. They were a team. And for the first time in a long while, John felt like that was enough.